Okay, Kelly, got your package up. Let's start with the letterhead here. Okay, so we got the letterhead up in front of me, and I think the first thing that we really notice when we're looking at the letterhead, and if I back off here a little bit, it'll even show it much more pronounced like this, but you have everything kind of bunched up in this corner right here. So you got this wide open page, and everything is jammed right up in this area here. I think that we can really, well, actually what that is doing is it's actually taking some hierarchy away from your actual mark, and we can see that here because this text here, this type is so dense that it's competing in hierarchy with your logo. You don't want that. That's not a position that you want to be in your letterhead. For that reason, what I would recommend is I would take that contact information, come down to the bottom of your page and try to assemble it down there. It's going to do two things. Number one, it's going to isolate your logo and really solidify that for branding purposes. Keep it more memorable because it'll be seen alone. And then also it'll open up this whole page for a really nice versatile letterhead that you can use for several different applications, including invoices when that time comes. So, and then the final suggestion here would be to take that horizontal rule and just remove it, because you're not really, haven't used it anywhere before, so there's no real reason to introduce it now. Plus it's creating kind of like this kind of stripes, these dueling stripes thing here with the bottom of your logo. And I don't think you want that. Okay, so those would be my recommendations for the letterhead itself. But mainly, the idea is to get that logo up separate and apart by itself, so it stands strong alone and it helps establish your identity. Let's go to the front of the business card. And again, that's what I'm talking about right there. I'm talking about just get that logo seen right there, and let's brand that in to the viewer's head. All right, so let's take that idea, carry it through there, and get everything else out of there and reformat that. Back at a business card, I think this is a lost opportunity, Kelly. I really do. I think that there's so much you could do typographically. Basically, you have a blank palette here because you've got your logo on the front. You don't even have to include it in the back. It can be purely typographic. You can just really think of a very cool way to typographically compose this information. As we know from typography, center alignment is not the most interesting alignment. As a matter of fact, it's probably the least most interesting alignment of all choices because it creates symmetry in the negative space. And as we know as designers, symmetry is boring. So that is what my recommendation would be, to really pump that up into a nice typographic composition, as opposed to this really super static centered. There's only one variation here, and that's the bold here on Graphic Designer. The rest is really almost a monotone type presentation. Okay, now let's go to the accordion fold. Now the accordion fold is something that first we see is that this piece is 3 inches by 3. Oh, back to the business card real quick, because that brings me this. This is the size of the business card right here. You can see my mouse down here, 3.60 by 2. So I'm not real sure what happened, but a business card is 3.5 by 2 inches, not 3.6. So that's too long, just so you know. Okay, accordion fold 3 by 3. I think 3 by 3 is pretty small, Kelly. It's pretty small. That could get. I mean, there's a lot you're not going to see at that size. Okay, so don't forget this is a leave behind. Okay, there's your branding right there. So presumably the person who was going to get this has already seen this, is already familiar with this logo. All right, so it's not just a recap of your work. In other words, it's not just another portfolio. It's just a reminder of who you are. So for that reason, you don't have to do stuff like this. You don't have to introduce your work. You don't have to say, okay, this is what this piece is, like you do in a portfolio. You can just show your work on these different pages. And it doesn't even have to be work that you've already shown in your portfolio. It can be completely different work. And I think that's just as interesting. I think that is more interesting than a recap of your work. Show some illustrations, show some cool stuff, as long as you have this opening and a closing that has your contact information, you're in. I would not even include this written information. That's a cool piece. I love that. Don't need that type. Don't need that. That's a good piece too. I mean, your work is solid. But we only have 3 pieces, so let's get a bunch of pieces on this so the person can unfold it and go, oh, shoot, I remember Kelly. I just interviewed her this morning, and this thing comes via messenger or whatever, or you drop it off later and say, could somebody drop this off to so-and-so, I forgot to leave it, whatever the situation is, however you get this delivered, the person who interviewed you looks at it and goes, I remember Kelly, oh yeah, and then starts looking at it and goes, oh wow, oh geez, she's an illustrator too, and she's this, and wow, awesome. So you just reinforce your branding by reminding that person of you after the interview is over. Okay, so that's why branding and consistency in branding is so important here. All right, so those would be my recommendations moving forward. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to let me know. All right, thanks, Kelly.